Hello everyone. It's so nice to see you again in a new video on my channel. Today, I'll be sharing with you another touching story about Lythieuca, a small but strong mother, and the tireless journey she and her husband Hùng have been on to treat their little son, Tony. As many of you already know, Tony, a kind and gentle boy, unfortunately suffers from developmental delay, which makes it difficult for him to speak and communicate. But no matter how hard the road gets, Lythieuca and Hùng always hold on to each other, believing that, as long as we don't give up, a miracle will come for our child. In today's episode, we'll see whether, after all the struggles and sleepless nights, a ray of hope is finally shining on this little family. Stay with me through the whole video to feel every tear, every smile, and the unshakable faith that Lythieuca and Hùng have for their beloved Tony. And don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment to send your love and encouragement to this small but brave family. Morning sunlight gently spread across the old red tiles, faded by time. A soft breeze from the back garden carried the faint aroma of coffee, mingling with the cheerful chirping of sparrows outside the porch. Hùng put aside the stack of documents and stood up when he heard a familiar voice. The old wooden door creaked open. Du stepped in, looking slightly rushed. Sweat still glistened on his forehead, and his tired eyes hinted at a long journey. He placed a few bags on the table and smiled faintly. "This time I can only stay for 2 days. I missed the little ones so much." Hùng nodded, pouring him a cup of hot green tea. They sat facing each other in the small house, filled with the warmth of the early morning. The old fan creaked as it spun, while sunlight streamed through the window bars, catching the dust in the air, forming a soft golden haze, like fading memories. For a while, neither of them spoke. Only the distant crowing of roosters and the laughter of children from the kindergarten across the road broke the silence. Du looked toward the yard and spoke slowly. Back then, he was so tiny, just learning to walk. "He's going to school now?" Hùng smiled softly and nodded. "Yeah, he can dress himself now, knows how to hold a pencil. Still a bit slow, but he's such a good kid. Every morning when I take him to school, he keeps looking back at his mom." Hearing that, Du lowered his head, fingers interlacing, his voice trembling. "I really owe both of them. Looking back now, I realize I haven't done anything for my child." Hùng said nothing more, just pushed the cup of tea closer to him. "What matters now is that the boy gets better, that he can learn, speak, and grow. Whoever can help, should help. The past, let it fade away." Outside, the wind rustled through the starfruit tree, and a few yellow leaves drifted to the ground. Du lifted his gaze toward the garden corner, where Tony's small tricycle still leaned against the mossy wall. A wave of emotions welled up inside him, love, regret, and an aching wish to start over. Du suddenly seemed to remember something. His eyes drifted toward the front yard, where streaks of sunlight stretched long across the dew-soaked tiles. His voice slowed, tinged with hesitation. "Hùng, this month is Tony's birthday, isn't it?" Hùng looked up and nodded softly. "Yeah, it was just a few days ago. It's been raining non-stop this year, storms one after another, and the network was down. I tried to call, but couldn't get through." A brief silence followed. The croaking of frogs echoed from the back canal, blending with the soft whistle of the wind through the bamboo wall. Du stared down at the cup of tea in his hands. The rising steam blurred his reddened eyes. "I knew it, that day, the city was flooded. The first floor of my place was underwater. I was going to video call him, but my phone got wet, lost all my data." He paused, his voice breaking. "Tony is my son, and yet, I couldn't even be there for his birthday. I really am the worst father in the world." Hùng looked at him quietly. He knew that feeling, the helplessness of wanting to be with the ones you love but being unable to. He placed a hand on Duet's shoulder and spoke gently. Kids don't hold grudges. He still talks about you. Every time he sees your photo, he smiles. Du lifted his head slightly. A faint light flickered in his eyes, a glimmer of comfort amid the guilt. He took a deep breath, his tone more resolute now. Next year, no matter how busy I am, I'll be there. I want to throw him a real birthday, with cake, candles, and both his mom and dad beside him. Hung nodded. The words were simple, yet they filled the room with a quiet weight. Morning sunlight fell upon the family photo hanging on the wall, Tony's bright smile frozen in time, with Hoài beside him, her face gentle but steadfast. A soft breeze drifted through, rustling the curtain, and from somewhere afar came the laughter of a child. The two men sat in silence, each lost in his own thoughts, one weighed down by regret, the other by a quiet, unspoken ache. Du opened the bag and began placing each item carefully on the old wooden table. The table wobbled slightly as he pulled out a chair, its legs creaked softly in the stillness of the early morning. There was a box of milk for picky eaters, a fresh coloring book that still smelled of new paper, and a neatly wrapped notebook with squared pages. He arranged them in perfect order, almost afraid to damage anything, brushing the dust off each item with careful hands. This one's for Tony to practice coloring, Du said quietly, and this notebook, I bought it for Hoài to learn writing. She still doesn't know how to write. I thought if she learned, it would be easier for her to teach Tony later. Hung paused for a moment, his eyes showing a hint of surprise. A strange feeling rose within him, not pity, but a deep, quiet respect for the man sitting before him. A man who had once made mistakes, but was now trying to make amends in the smallest, most sincere ways. Du lowered his head, running his rough fingers gently over the notebook's cover. His voice softened even more. Don't tell her I bought these, okay? I don't want her to feel awkward. I just hope she'll learn, so Tony can have someone to help him study at home. When he finished speaking, silence settled again. Sunlight filtered through the window, falling across his calloused hands, hands that had once drifted far from family, now reaching back toward the simplest, most sacred things. Hung looked at him and nodded slowly. He understood, behind those words was remorse and love, quiet but enduring, expressed not through grand gestures, but through humble, heartfelt acts. From the yard drifted the earthy scent of damp soil and the faint aroma of coffee that Hoài had roasted a few days ago. On the wall, a paper calendar fluttered at the corner, clearly showing Friday, the day Tony always called coloring day, at school. Neither of them spoke further. Hung's gaze lingered on the new notebook lying on the table, and deep inside, a gentle hope began to bloom, the kind of hope that grows slowly, quietly, but sincerely. Before leaving, Du quietly pushed his chair back and stood up. The wooden legs scraped against the tile floor with a dry, echoing sound, blending into the silence so deep that even the wind slipping through the doorframe could be heard. The noon sunlight had begun to slant sharply, streaming through the narrow wooden window and scattering bright streaks across the mottled floor. Tiny specks of dust floated in the air, spinning lazily in the golden light, as if time itself had paused to listen. He looked around the modest little house, every corner filled with traces of care and quiet perseverance. The edges of the wooden table were worn smooth, the porcelain teacups chipped, and in the corner hung Hoài raincoat, still stained with half-dried mud. On the table, the tea in the cup was still warm, wisps of steam curling upward before fading into sunlight. Everything was simple, poor even, yet clean and orderly, just like the people who lived here. Du took a deep breath. His eyes were heavy with sadness yet steady, and his voice sank low, each word slow and deliberate, like a vow carved into his heart. Tony is my blood. I can't stand aside any longer. If he really has trouble speaking, I'll go with you and Hoài to get him treated. I'll cover the costs, everything he needs. I promise. Even if I have to work extra hours, take night shifts, I'll do it. As long as my boy has a chance to speak, to live like other kids. I won't give up. His voice faltered near the end. The long dry eyes suddenly grew red. All the years of chasing work far from home, the missed calls, the forgotten birthdays, came flooding back, tightening in his chest. For the first time, he truly felt the pain of a father who hadn't been there. Hùng stood still for a long moment. The light caught his sunburned face, outlining the quiet sincerity in his eyes. He stepped closer and clasped Du's rough, calloused hand, the firm grip of two men who had weathered their own storms. "Thank you, Du," Hùng said softly, his voice trembling just a little. "Don't worry. I see him as my own son, too. As long as the three of us keep trying, Tony will get better, I believe it." Du didn't reply, he simply nodded. Their hands stayed locked, and though no words followed, both understood, a silent pact had been made. Not out of obligation, nor because of the past, but for the sake of a little boy waiting for a miracle ahead. The small house suddenly seemed brighter. Outside, the breeze stirred the thin curtain, carrying in the earthy scent of wet soil and the faint sweetness of starfruit blossoms. From afar came the playful shouts of children just out of school, mingling with the chirping of bulbuls high in the areca trees. Together, it all formed a quiet melody, a harmony of hope and humanity. The fading light fell upon the family photo on the wall, Tony smiling radiantly, Hoài standing beside him, and behind them, two men, each holding a place in the child's life. And in that moment, though neither of them spoke, it was as if the whole room whispered. It's time to begin again, for the child, and for themselves. Evening settled in. The golden light of the setting sun spilled in from the fields, bathing the small courtyard in a warm glow. Hoài stepped inside, her conical hat speckled with mud, clothes soaked through, arms wrapped around a heavy basket of eggplants. Her breath was short, sweat mixed with dust on her face, yet her lips carried a faint smile, the kind that belongs to someone long accustomed to hardship. Hùng looked up from the table and quickly spoke when he saw her bent figure crossing the threshold. "Go change your clothes, you've got mud all over." Hoài set the basket down, wiping the sweat from her brow. Yes, the fields were flooded today. The mud was so thick, I almost slipped a few times. The afternoon sun's still warm but the air's damp. Be careful, you might catch a cold. I'm fine. As long as you and Tony are healthy, I'm happy. The simple words made Hùng smile softly. He watched her walk into the back room to change, her wet hair clinging to her shoulders, leaving faint muddy footprints on the old tiled floor. A moment later, she returned, hair neatly tied, wearing her familiar beige t-shirt, holding a small towel in one hand. The fire in the kitchen was already burning. The crackling of wood blended with the rich aroma of sautéed garlic and chili, filling the house with a comforting warmth. They sat together at the small wooden table, slicing the eggplants, mixing them with salt, and preparing jars to take to the market the next morning. Hoài laughed softly. "Look at these, they're all perfect. We might get a good price tomorrow." Hùng replied gently. "Yeah, but remember to save a few for Mom. She says she likes your pickled eggplants the best." Both chuckled. The sound of the knife tapping against the cutting board, the rustle of salt, and the whisper of wind outside the porch blended into a strangely familiar rhythm. The scent of fresh vegetables, chili, and fish sauce drifted out to the yard, where the family cat stretched lazily, yawned, and curled back into sleep. The light faded gradually, leaving only a soft golden streak shining through the window, painting a faint line across the wall. Hùng sealed each jar carefully while Hoài arranged them neatly in a basket, her lips murmuring calculations, the price, the profit, her face showing both worry and quiet tenderness. Inside the small kitchen, their laughter rose and fell gently, not loud, but warm enough to fill the silent corners of weary days. And amid the thin haze of cooking smoke, something simple yet profound lingered, the quiet warmth of a family slowly being rebuilt, piece by piece, after so much pain and absence. While Hoài was bathing, the gentle sound of running water came from the back of the house. Hùng sat quietly on the wooden chair by the table. The warm yellow light from the lamp spilled softly over a coloring book and a new notebook that still carried the crisp scent of paper. On the cover bloomed a small chrysanthemum. The price tag still clung to one corner, proof that whoever bought it had been in a hurry, yet still chose something of the best quality. Hùng reached out, his fingertips brushing the notebook's edge, his hand trembling ever so slightly. He remembered Du's eyes that morning, filled with both guilt and resolve, like the glimmer of light breaking through after a long storm. That man, though late, still wanted to make things right, not for himself, but for the little boy they both loved. A quiet sigh escaped Hung's lips, not of weariness, but of release. His gaze lingered on the blank pages, and he whispered softly, perhaps to himself, or perhaps to Tony. Maybe this time, my son, you'll truly have another father by your side. Outside, dusk had fallen. The purple-gold hue of twilight stretched across the tiled roof, spilling through the narrow wooden window, tinting the old floor with faded light. The smell of cooking smoke from the neighbor's kitchen mingled with the scent of freshly pickled eggplant, wrapping the air in a strangely comforting warmth. Hoài, her hair still damp, sat by the wooden platform, wrapping the jars of pickles they had just finished. She carefully wiped each jar clean, stuck labels on them, and arranged them neatly into a woven bamboo basket. Her thin, steady hands moved with quiet precision, her focused eyes reflecting the silent resilience of a rural woman who had long learned how to endure. Hùng stood and opened the door to check the small delivery cart outside. He tightened the ropes holding the baskets in place, making sure everything was ready for the early morning market. From inside, Hoài called out. An oi, de em zeptha me hu no ne. Cho ham ne chik dong lam, bon duok new day. See you mang het rad. Beat dao ai tik ti min con ko tsai de doi them. Their voices echoed softly through the little house, blending with the chirping of crickets in the garden and the distant barking of dogs, forming a tranquil countryside symphony at twilight. And within that simple scene, a quiet hope began to grow, a belief that Tony would heal, that old wounds would close, and that this humble home, after all the storms, would once again glow with light, with laughter. Will Du keep his promise? The promise of a father who once lost his child, now seeking redemption through love and devotion? Will Tony, the little boy with those pure, innocent eyes, be able to speak his first words in the arms of his parents? And what about Hoài, the woman who has endured so much pain? Will she open her heart and accept help from the man who once left her behind? Amid all the changes of life, will that small miracle truly appear? To heal, to forgive, and to begin again? Stay tuned for the next episode to find out what happens next. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story to spread love and hope to more people. A new journey awaits, one where faith, tears, and compassion still have the power to heal every wound.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến video tiếp theo về câu chuyện của mẹ đơn thân Lytieuca và cảnh sát Hùng. Thì mọi người thân mến, thì cũng như các tập trước, mọi người nếu như mà đã theo dõi kênh mình thì chắc là cũng đã biết rõ rằng là kênh mình thì sẽ làm dạng giống như review lại. Thì ở trong tập trước mọi người cũng đã biết là Tony bị bệnh, điều đó khiến cho cậu bé dù đã hơn 2 tuổi rồi nhưng mà vẫn chưa có nói được như các bạn. Điều đó khiến cho Hùng, Hoài ca rất là lo lắng. Và hôm nay khi Đô tới thăm thì Đô là bố ruột của Tony thì biết việc này thì cũng khá là lo lắng, và anh cảm thấy có trách nhiệm và anh hứa là sẽ cố gắng chịu toàn bộ chi phí để có thể chữa bệnh cho Tony. Vậy thì mọi chuyện sẽ ra sao, mời mọi người đón xem vào tập sau để biết thêm chi tiết nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người.